Hi everyone, welcome back to another weekly market update. Hi Natalia.
Hi Reem.
Gold is going up. What's happened?
Gold is going up because central banks around the world are buying the gold.
Hi everyone, Samer Raslan is here. I'm a senior market analyst at Zylostar. And let's talk about gold, the hottest topic on the planet currently. As Natalia has mentioned, one of the main reasons that gold is going up is central banks around the world buying gold to accumulate it as a reserve. And this is actually happening because there is a global fear that the United States dollar might collapse soon. And I think the Americans know that and they're getting prepared to it. There's actually a lot of happening around the world that nobody's talking about in fundamentals. I genuinely believe that fundamentals have different layers. We have the big layers that are moving the markets around, and there's mid or short-term fundamentals that sometimes are used to manipulate markets. So the second reason is why gold is going up is actually because the Americans or USA has threatened to increase the tariffs upon China. And this is not the first time we find this happening, tariffs and all that drama to go up. The main reason for that to be implemented is to weaken the dollar. And I've spoken about this in an earlier video. However, about fundamentals, there is more to be understood. I'm going to speak about how they manipulate news to convince people around the world that it's a good time to sell something. And these fundamentals that were initiated about the tariffs, it was a threat. However, it caused a crash in indices like US 30, S&P 500, NASDAQ, and also in Bitcoin, and also continued to pressure more bullish momentum on gold. And also we have people panicking around the world. You're seeing gold going up, up, up. Uncertainties, geopolitical tensions remain here and there around the world. That's why gold is going up for these main three reasons. Now about this fundamental conspiracies, I'm going to be talking about it on my personal channel on Instagram, possibly this week. So you guys feel free to check that out and understand more what I'm coming from and what I want to tell you. So, okay, currently gold technically is bullish. However, we had a very decent Marubozo came after a hanging man. So from here, we saw gold retrace because whoever shorted at that price, 4,400s, they closed their trades by Friday ending. So technically what I want to see is gold might respect this support because of all these fundamentals and reasons that's compelling it to go up, might respect it and make a double tops or even possibly break above it. However, what I want to see is a good entry. So the optimal move I'm looking to gold is that gold breaks below the support, traces and liquidates this trend line over here, reaching to a stronger support at the levels of 4,000 or between 4,000 to 4,050. So pay attention. If I get a confirmation in here, right? And it can be in many ways. If I get a confirmation in here, you can actually buy gold and hold it for a longer period of time. However, what is nobody is expecting and might happen actually is something happens, manipulated fundamentals, they convince people that there is a good level of, let's say, confidence in financial markets and the global economy or the American economy, whatever it is. And we might see gold even collapsing further down, reaching to first support we're looking at is 3,800s or 900s, or in a very lower scenario, that can actually go lower than that to 3,700s. So this is an optimal retracement for gold currently. If it goes to that and we get a decent confirmation, and notice if it goes further down, this gives big governments, big banks, institutional investors, whatever it is, better prices to buy at. And this is always why they make these short-term manipulated fundamentals, to give reasons to people to sell in order for these big guys to buy. Remember what happened when Donald Trump said, I'm going to boost the economy, you're going to be happy about buying, winning, you're going to be tired of winning, all of that. A while later, we found markets crashing, or possibly its biggest crash in the American history to a president. So what that happened is it gave them a better price. Warren Buffett, Donald Trump, everybody who is big enough running financial markets, have enough liquidity to run markets, they always want to buy in a cheap price and sell premium. And I had a lot of students reaching out to me in the past 2 weeks telling me, should I buy gold? Should I buy gold? Even though they are seeing it going up, I was against that hold. I'm still, because it is a premium price, right? We don't have the reasons for it to go down as much, but you never know when the news comes and push it down. Bitcoin itself, it went down $20,000 in a day, and that's what we're going to talk about in a second. So let's go into Bitcoin. All right, Bitcoin right now is very interesting. There's also huge reasons why Bitcoin is a very great investment. I've spoken about it 2 weeks ago, and I'm still holding that, and I think it's a good time to buy Bitcoin right now for a long term still, and it's a very good price right now. Why? It's because of what's happening globally in a bigger scale of fundamentals and what banks and Americans are going to do and wanting to do, and nobody's talking about. I'm going to also speak about this on my personal terminal on Instagram, possibly in a week or two. However, for now, we just know about the results. So we had Bitcoin crashing approximately $20,000 because of that threatening that never was implemented or hasn't implemented yet. Whatever it is, it crashed. So still, that gave us actually an even better entry, and I've given that trade also on my terminal about where you can buy, placing your stop loss, etc., etc. So we had markets now retracing, or Bitcoin retracing to its fair value gap, and we found some certain demand from here. Now, what we can see is that it also liquidated this trend line of this ascending channel, even though it's not as massive, but still, Bitcoin loves to take liquidity, and it's always been the same case. So from here, we might see another attempt to break below it, creating a double bottom for us before a market moves to this inner resistance or possibly the fair value gap. We found some retracement and a continuation to the upside. This is what I'm looking for on Bitcoin. I've mentioned as long as Bitcoin does not break below 100,000, it's still a very, very good time to invest in Bitcoin. They actually did liquidate that because it was the psychological stop loss for everybody before we saw it pumping up. So Bitcoin is that asset, even though a lot of people, big people, CEOs of big banks say that governments don't like Bitcoins and someday it's going to go to zero. I personally don't believe in that because Bitcoin holds a lot of things for the future of global economy, and if you think they're not controlling it, well, they're working on it. And I think they've done a very, very good job. Why do you think $20,000 fell in a day? Who can sell as much, right? So that's about Bitcoin. Let's go into NASDAQ. So going back to the technicals, I've highlighted to you 2 weeks ago. Yeah, we didn't do market updates last week because we were very busy with Expo and we had the world's biggest IB networking events in the Future Museum, so it was too crowded. However, we're back to you, and as I've mentioned, we have this ascending wedge or narrowing wedge, right? I was telling you that a crash is coming because technically it was indicating for us, and this is exactly what happened. We had no reason for the crash to happen, and suddenly that news dropped and boom, we had a huge crash. Now, if you go to a bigger time scale, I'm not going to now, it's on the 1 hour time frame, but you will see this ascending triangle. We had a break and retest. Perfect technicals. Now from here, we had the entry that all the big players in the markets were looking for it. And you can see that even though markets closed here, next day it was open there. This reflects how much demand there is. Now market is consolidating. There is a little bit of bearish signals in here, according to how market is forming. So we might see it consolidating, possibly reaching to the 24,000 support again. However, we could have entered multiply here and still holding that support. So if it does go down, it will be for a reason to liquidate these supports. And from here, if it makes for us a double bottoms, we get a good entry, you can buy and hold NASDAQ. That's about NASDAQ. Let's go into EURUSD. Looking at EURUSD, we had a perfect double bottoms followed by a confirmation and also a descending triangle on a very strong support level. Was a very simple and easy entry here for those who believe and work according to technical analysis. Who don't believe in it, believe in me. I'll get you there. Okay, so it reached two resistance market fell from there. We had a confirmation. We might see it continuing a little bit down to this inner or lower support, because we have some decent indications here for the retracement, and we can see it going up from there, continuing in an uptrend, or it might consolidate soon. So that's about Euro USD. You can buy or look for a, yeah, you can buy. It's not a financial advice. It's just informative education. Yeah. So you can look to buy from the support if we get a confirmation here. Notice I always mention confirmations because in technical analysis, we predict people behaviors, right? But we always need a confirmation to understand if people actually behave the way we expect them to behave. That's about Euro USD. Let's go into Nifty50. Looking at Nifty50, also as I've highlighted two weeks ago, that we have some strong bullish confirmations from here, and there's a very decent possibility for the price to break above this symmetrical narrowing triangle. All right. So we had a breakout actually, and there is some decent, let's say, resistance at the highest of all time. Of course, we should always find something like that, all-time highs. Speaking of 50-50, not in gold, of course. So from here, what we want to see is a retracement to this support, fill in this fair value gap, or possibly to the trend line itself. We get a confirmation in this range, and we can go for a long entry. That's about Nifty50. Now we're going to go to our fundamental part with Mr. Median from London. Hi, Amir.
Thank you, Samer. Greeting everyone. I'm Median here, Senior Fundamental Analyst at Zylostar and Master of Finance student in London. Let's talk about fundamental. Let's talk about the most crucial aspect of financial markets, which is fundamental. I want to kick this session with the last week, as last week was super volatile. We got so many news about geopolitical tensions, plus corporate earnings, and also economic indicators, plus speeches. Let's dive into it. So the US federal government remains shut down following Congress' failure to pass funding bills, leaving hundreds of thousands of federal employees unemployed without salary. Most key economic indicators were postponed and created a temporary data blackout. Essential services such as national security continues to operate, while the Federal Reserve continues releasing self-funded reports and speeches. Fetcher Jerome Powell noted the economy is on firmer footing, but labor market weakness and low hiring persist. He hinted the Fed may end its balance sheet drawdown soon and is prepared to cut rates if needed, emphasizing a meeting-by-meeting approach due to uncertainty caused by the shutdown. Markets reacted positively, pricing in expectations for a rate cut later this year. Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey highlighted resilience in the UK financial system. While future rate cuts are possible, the Bank of England signaled a cautious approach, balancing inflation concerns with a structural risk. Gold price climbed last week, driven by economic uncertainty, potential Fed easing, and a weaker US dollar, plus highlighted geopolitical risk, including US-China tensions and trade disputes. China has expanded export controls on rare earths and critical minerals, requiring licenses for materials effective by December of 2020. The restrictions target industries including semiconductors, electronic, and defense systems. Elevated geopolitical tensions continue to support safe haven demand and the market volatility. The UK economy showed modest growth in August of 2025, with GDP up only by 0.1% month-on-month, driven by services and constructions. Year-on-year, GDP grew by 1.5%, though production declined and services output remained flat for the second month. Inflation rose to 4%, unemployment rate edged up to 4.8%, and wage growth slowed to 4.7%, raising concerns about cost of living pressures in the United Kingdom. Last but not least, corporate earnings in the United States provide market guidance. Major US corporates, particular banks like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and Wells Fargo reported a strong third quarter earnings, with American Express also exceeding expectations. While these results boosted sentiment, executives cautioned about inflation, shutdown effects, and global trade challenges. Let's have a look for the upcoming week. For the next week, some giant firms in the US are going to release their corporate earnings for the third quarter of 2025, such as Coca-Cola, Netflix, Tesla, IBM, American Airlines, Intel, P&G, Texas Instruments, plus Triple M. From the economic indicators, so the next week, initially at the beginning of the week, we are gonna get CPI numbers for different countries such as Canadian dollar and Great British pound, and don't forget PMI, or let's say Purchasing Managers Index, for the different regions such as Europe, UK, and US are gonna be released also on Friday, 24th of October, which will be maybe at the center of attention of the market participants for the economic growth, or better say global economic growth. And eventually, if the US government shutdown is going to be ended, CPI will be released at the end of the week, next week on Friday, 1:30 p.m. to the UK time. Stay tuned with Zylostar. See you next week.
Thank you all for watching and stay tuned for fresh drops on next week.